The fire chief slammed an old letter onto the steel table and ordered Captain Elias Ward to surrender his badge before the cameras arrived. Why had a 30-year-old envelope been hidden inside a burned church wall? Why did the mayor's advisor turn pale when Elias read the name at the bottom? And why was the town's most trusted firefighter suddenly being treated like a thief? Elias said nothing. He only touched the faded photograph in his pocket, the last image of the mother who died without answers. By sunrise, a buried rescue, a stolen identity, and one powerful family's secret would collide. Stay to the end, because that letter would change who the town called a hero. The badge spun across the steel table, flashing underlights before settling with its point aimed at Elias Ward. "Leave it there," Chief Nolan Price said. Elias kept his hands on his knees. The room was too cold, and the vent rattled every 12 seconds. Beyond the glass, reporters crowded the corridor. Claire Mercer slid a folder toward him. "Sign the statement, Captain. You removed municipal property, concealed evidence, and damaged this department. I logged the box at 1418. Nolan's jaw tightened. That entry no longer exists. It existed long enough for someone to delete it. At the wall, Tessa Reed stood in dress uniform. Compact and red-haired, she had soot under one thumbnail. She watched Nolan and said nothing. Claire opened the folder. "You were seen leaving St. Agnes with a photograph. I was seen holding one. You admit it?" "I admit what the camera shows." Daniel Cross leaned forward. "Where is the original letter?" Elias glanced at the smoke-darkened envelope on the table. Its flap had been cut cleanly, then pressed down again. Glue shone near one corner. "That isn't how it looked in the church." Claire's fingers stopped. "Excuse me?" "It was sealed. Now it's been opened twice." Nolan pushed back his chair. "Enough." The badge trembled. A microphone thumped beyond the glass. Elias smelled burnt coffee, lemon polish, and beneath both, old ash rising from the envelope. Claire lowered her voice. "This can still end quietly. Surrender the badge. Accept leave. Stop contacting witnesses." "Which witnesses?" "You know exactly who." "No," Elias said. "I know who you're afraid I'll find." Tessa's eyes lifted. Nolan turned toward her. "Firefighter Reed, you are here as an observer." "Yes, Chief." "Then observe." She clasped her hands behind her back, but Elias saw her thumb press twice against her jacket seam. Their station signal for recording. Claire stood, her dark coat still buttoned. Captain Ward has built a private mythology around a tragedy he barely remembers. We will not let one man's grief rewrite city history. Elias reached into his shirt pocket by habit. His fingers met only cloth. His mother's photograph had been taken that morning. For 1 second, he could not undo his cuff button. His nail scraped plastic. No one moved. Then he looked at the envelope. "Who is Jonah Vale?" Daniel asked. Nolan answered too quickly. "A disgraced firefighter." Claire turned. "That is not relevant." Elias raised his eyes. "Then why was his badge hidden with a letter addressed to my mother?" The corridor went still. Claire's color drained. Her hand moved toward it, then stopped. Nolan noticed. So did Tessa. Elias leaned back. "You read it." Claire's lips parted. "You knew the name before I said it at St. Agnes. You knew there was a child. You knew there was a window." Nolan struck the table. The badge jumped beneath the folder. "This hearing is over." "No," said a voice from the doorway. Judge Evelyn Brooks held a sealed evidence bag. Inside was a second envelope, smoke-stained and unopened. She placed it beside Elias's badge. "This was delivered to my office at 6:42 this morning." On the front, in faded blue ink, were 4 words, "For the boy from the window." At 2:07 p.m., stained glass cracked inward like ice. "North aisle clear," Elias called. Smoke rolled beneath St. Agnes's ceiling, sharp with varnish and wet plaster. Plastic covered the pews. Tessa held the hose while Owen Park, the city inspector, shouted from the side door. The electrical panel was disconnected. Then something else fed it. Small flames clung behind paneling near the sacristy. Elias shut the line, listened to the hiss fade, and pressed his glove to the wall. Heat remained in one strip. Tool. Tessa passed him the Halligan. Paneling split. Ash dusted his boots. Behind it was a cavity absent from the plans. Reverend Miriam Cole waited beyond the tape in a wool coat over her clerical collar. At 62, silver-haired and slight, she rubbed the wooden cross on her wrist. "That wall predates the shelter," she said. "Nothing should be there." Elias crouched. A dented tin box rested between 2 studs. Beside it lay a child's blue glass bead. The bead rolled across the boards and stopped against his knee. Tessa lowered her flashlight. "Recognize it?" "No." But his mother had owned beads that color. Owen stepped closer. "Construction debris. I can take it." "You're not evidence control." "It's my site." "It's a fire scene." Elias photographed everything, then faced Tessa's body camera. 1418. Historical object recovered from concealed wall space. Exterior soot. No visible heat damage. He lifted the box. Something inside clicked. Scratched into the lid were 2 faded initials. JV. "Call dispatch. Evidence intake and a city archivist." Tessa raised her radio. It spoke first. "Engine 3. Hold all property. Chief Price en route." "You called him?" Elias asked. "No." Owen's phone buzzed. He read the screen and turned it face down. Nolan Price arrived 10 minutes later without gear. Cold air followed him inside. "Where is it?" "Still sealed." Nolan's gaze caught on the initials. "Give it to me." "We need a chain of custody form." "I'm the chief." "That isn't a form." Nolan stepped closer. "This building belongs to a protected trust. We don't create public records before legal review." Miriam crossed the tape. "The church owns the wall." Nolan's phone lit with Claire Mercer's name. He declined the call. Tessa saw it. So did Elias. "I'll log the recovery now," Elias said. "No." The word cut through the nave. "You'll transfer it directly to me. No archivist." Elias opened his tablet and entered the time, location, and object description. The upload bar moved. Nolan caught the screen's edge. "Captain, documenting evidence? You're making a problem where there isn't one." Miriam's thumb stopped on her cross. Was there a letter inside? No one had opened the box. Nolan turned toward her too quickly. Water tapped into a bucket near the altar. The tablet chimed. "Upload complete." Nolan released it. "Bring the box to my office. No second report." Elias wrapped the container. Through a split near the hinge, he saw a yellowed envelope, a photograph, and an old firefighter's token. The contents shifted. The envelope slid close enough for him to read the name across its face. Lena Ward, his mother. Elias looked up. Nolan was already watching him. Rain began before Elias reached home, ticking against the kitchen window in uneven bursts. He set his coat over a chair and turned the St. Agnes photograph face down. Then he looked. His mother stood beside the shelter steps, one hand on a boy whose face had been cut from the print. A firefighter stood behind them, tall, narrow-faced, hair flattened by a helmet. On his chest was the same oval token Elias had seen inside the box. J. Vale. Elias took the picture from his shirt pocket. the one Lena had carried until the day she died. Its corners were worn soft. She stood in the same coat beneath the same cracked stone arch. Different day. Same place. He aligned the photographs under the yellow lamp. A scratch crossed both images near the lower step. "Same camera," he said. The refrigerator started. Pipes knocked twice. He called Nolan. The chief answered on the 6th ring. "You're off duty." The box was opened. A pause. "No, it wasn't. I saw the envelope. You saw smoke damage and assumed the rest. It had my mother's name. That box contained donation receipts and church records." Elias watched rain crawl down the glass. "Then send me the intake number. You don't need it. I created the recovery entry and exceeded your authority." Elias turned the photograph over. Beneath Lena's handwriting, an inkless impression remained. He angled it toward the lamp. Don't let them name him a coward. "Nolan, who was Jonah Vale?" The line stayed open. Elias heard breathing, then a murmur away from the receiver. A woman's voice. Nolan returned. "Take tomorrow off." "That wasn't my question. You've been carrying your mother's death like an assignment for 15 years. It is not one. She never mentioned him. Maybe there was nothing to mention." Elias folded a dish towel over the puddle beneath his coat. "You knew the box was there. I knew St. Agnes had old records. You asked where it was before anyone described it." Silence again. "Go to sleep, Captain." The call ended, but the connection did not. 3 seconds passed. Then the woman's voice came through, distant and sharp. "Did he read the name?" The line clicked dead. Elias kept the phone to his ear until the refrigerator stopped. At 9:18 p.m., he drove to the station. Tessa was alone in the apparatus bay, polishing soot from a coupling. She glanced toward the office windows. "You're not supposed to be here." "Was the entry still in the system when you left?" "At 6, yes. And now?" She unlocked the terminal. The bay smelled of rubber and detergent. Blue light washed across her face as she searched. "No recovery report." "Check deleted records." "I don't have permission." "You have audit access. For maintenance." "Tessa." She held his gaze, then typed. A red line appeared. Entry 1418, removed 1743. User NPRICE. Tessa sat back. He deleted it himself. A door closed upstairs. They looked toward the stairwell. Nolan's office light came on. Elias slipped the photographs into his inner pocket. "Print the audit page." The printer started with a mechanical cough. Footsteps crossed the floor above them and stopped. Then Nolan called down into the bay. "Captain Ward, bring me your mother's photograph." The printer shuddered and stopped. Elias pulled the audit page free before Nolan reached the bottom stair. "Give me the photograph," Nolan said. Tessa stood between the terminal and the open bay, one hand on the keyboard. Rain hissed outside. Diesel, wet concrete, and hot paper filled the air. "You deleted a recovery entry," Elias said. "I corrected an error." "Whose?" Nolan looked at Tessa. "Go home. She's on shift." "Not anymore." Tessa's jaw tightened. "The system shows your credentials, Chief." "It shows access, not intent." Elias folded the printout and slipped it inside his coat. "Then the archive can clarify it." Nolan's face barely moved. "Stay away from city records until legal clears this." "You don't control the archive." "No," Nolan said. "Claire Mercer controls the building." At 8:36 the next morning, the municipal archive smelled of dust, radiator heat, and old glue. Sylvia Grant waited behind the counter with her gray cardigan buttoned wrong. At 55, she wore a silver bob and tapped a pencil against her wrist. I pulled the 1994 St. Agnes file, she said. You have 20 minutes. Why? This request was flagged before I opened it. Tessa set down a paper cup. By whom? Sylvia did not touch it. You didn't hear that from me. 3 boxes held dispatch summaries, permits, and statements. Elias moved page by page while Tessa photographed index numbers. Then he found the official report. Arthur Mercer, volunteer civilian rescuer. Jonah Vale, abandoned assigned position. That wording is wrong, Tessa said. How do you know? No firefighter gets that line without an action review. They searched. No review. No annex. No death summary. Sylvia stood at the end of the table, pencil now still. Was this file altered? Elias asked. She glanced at the security camera. I catalog. I don't interpret. Elias placed the report beside an older sheet. The report was whiter, its edge free of rust marks. Tessa leaned closer. Fresh glue. Sylvia closed her eyes. How old is the replacement? Elias asked. Captain, please. The elevator bell sounded outside. Her face changed. She reached for the report, but Elias held one corner. Who replaced it? No one you can fight from this room. The door opened. Claire Mercer entered in a camel coat, followed by Marcus Finch carrying a leather folder. Claire smiled. Captain Ward, researching family history on city time? I'm off duty. For now. Tessa raised her phone. Marcus stepped beside her. No photography in restricted collections. There's no restriction notice, Tessa said. There is now. Claire looked at Jonah's name. My father spent years rebuilding St. Agnes. Did he write this? He saved children. Which ones? The pencil snapped in Sylvia's hand. A red line crossed her palm. Claire said, Sylvia, take your break. Sylvia gathered the boxes too quickly. A loose page slipped to the floor. Beneath the table, Elias saw a routing slip in blue handwriting. Replace master copy, C. Mercer authorization. Marcus moved. Tessa was closer. She placed her boot over the paper. Nobody spoke. Then the archive lights flickered, and the security camera above them turned away from the table. At 6:10 p.m., the Mercer Foundation banner snapped above the courthouse plaza. Elias stood beneath it in dress uniform while volunteers arranged chairs around the memorial wall. Rainwater shone inside the brass letters. Arthur Mercer, savior of 12 children. Nolan adjusted Elias's collar. Stand here, accept the citation, and say nothing about the archive. I wasn't given a citation. You were given an opportunity. Across the plaza, Claire greeted donors while Marcus Finch shadowed her. Tessa approached with 2 paper cups. Coffee? Nolan took one. Firefighter Reed, rear line. I'm with Captain Ward's unit. Not tonight. She handed the other to Elias anyway. A school choir filed onto the steps. Henry Dawson, 71, watched from the veterans' row and removed his cap. Claire stepped to the microphone. 32 years ago, my father entered chaos when others lost courage. Applause rolled across the plaza. Water ran down Arthur Mercer's carved name. Some tragedies leave families searching for explanations, Claire continued. We honor them, even when grief distorts memory. The clapping thinned. Nolan leaned close. Keep your face neutral. Claire turned toward Elias. Captain Ward's family understands better than most the cost of one firefighter's tragic failure. A boy in the first row wore a red paper helmet with a silver star in crayon. He held it out. For you. His teacher caught his wrist. Not now, Caleb. The paper bent between their hands. She guided him back without looking at Elias. Elias set his untouched coffee at the memorial's base. Claire beckoned. Captain? Say you accept the city's account. she whispered. I accept the microphone. Elias faced the crowd. Every rescue report begins with one question. Who was still inside? Nolan stepped toward the stage. I have not been allowed to read the answer. Claire reached for the microphone, but Henry struck his cane once against the pavement. The sound stopped the plaza. Let him finish, Henry said. Nolan signaled the technician. The speakers died. Claire said, Captain Ward has been under unusual strain. The city has offered him support. A dark-haired reporter moved into the aisle. May Larson, Bellwether Ledger. What record has he not been allowed to read? Marcus blocked her. Questions afterward. Was Jonah Vale named in it? Claire's hand slipped. Nolan ordered the choir to begin. Their first note came late. As the crowd turned, Claire drew Elias behind the wall. You are confusing restraint with weakness. No, I'm measuring it. My father's name is not yours to damage. Then it should survive a document. Her breath clouded between them. Take the leave, Elias. Nolan joined them. Your locker will be sealed tonight. For what cause? Fitness review. Tessa appeared to check her radio. Her phone rested inside her open jacket, lens exposed. Claire noticed. Search her. Tessa stepped back. Henry rose and placed himself between them. His cane trembled on wet pavement. I remember the window, he said. Claire went still. Henry looked at Elias. The firefighter who climbed to it was not Arthur Mercer. The choir kept singing while Tessa's phone recorded every word. Tessa waited until the choir's final note dissolved into traffic. Move, she whispered. Elias followed her through the service lane behind the courthouse. Henry Dawson came after them, his cane striking the wet bricks out of rhythm. Inside Tessa's car, cold air blew from the heater. She locked the doors and set her phone on the dashboard. You got it? Elias asked. Most. She played. Claire's voice emerged beneath fabric noise. Search her. Then Henry. The firefighter who climbed to it was not Arthur Mercer. Tessa dragged the file back. There's more. A rustle. Nolan's voice, low and close. Destroy the letter before Ward understands who the boy from the window was. The heater clicked off. Elias looked at Henry. What boy? Henry watched rain slide down the windshield. I was 29. Ladder crew. 3rd floor. East side. St. Agnes? He nodded. You told the city nothing, Tessa said. I told 3 people. His hand tightened on the cane. By morning, the report had changed. Changed how? They said smoke confused us. Said Mercer entered first. Said Vale abandoned his post. Elias's voice stayed level. Did he? Henry's mouth moved before sound came. No. A bus washed white light across his face. He went back. The rear exits were chained. He found children behind the dormitory door and moved them toward the east window. How many? I never knew. I was outside by then. Tessa replayed Nolan's words. Boy from the window. Henry flinched. You saw him? Elias asked. I saw Vale lean out with a child. 11, maybe 12. Bare feet. Something blue tied around his neck. Elias felt the photograph through his coat. A bead? Henry met his eyes. Glass. Caught the floodlight. Rain hammered the roof. What happened to the child? Tessa asked. A woman took him. Dark coat. Brown hair. She screamed Vale's name when he turned back. My mother, Elias said. Henry lowered his gaze. Maybe. You knew her. She came to the station twice. Nolan was still a lieutenant. Mercer's lawyer met her both times. What did she ask? For Jonah's things. For the dispatch tape. For someone to say he hadn't run. And you? Henry rubbed a split in the cane's varnish. I watched from the apparatus floor. Outside, volunteers bagged paper helmets. One slipped free and flattened beneath a tire. Tessa saved 3 copies and sent one to a private address. Nolan will call it incomplete. It is incomplete, Elias said. Henry reached inside his coat and removed a brass key. I kept one thing complete. He set it in Elias's palm. The metal was warm. Old station lockers were cleared in 1998. Vale's wasn't. Where? Basement storage under Station 1. Locker 37. I changed the tag before they sealed the room. Tessa checked the mirror. We're being watched. Across the plaza, Marcus stood beneath the awning with a phone to his ear. Henry opened the door. Come with us, Elias said. No, if I do, they'll know what matters. They already know. Not yet. He stepped into the rain and walked toward Marcus, cane tapping steadily. Tessa started the engine. Elias curled his fingers around the key. Stamped into its head, nearly worn away, were 2 initials. JV. At 7:12 the next morning, Elias found a gray envelope taped across his locker. Report to administration. No gear. No contact with crew. He peeled it free. The glue pulled paint from the metal. Tessa stood by the engine, checking gauges she had checked twice. Nolan watched from the office balcony. Captain, he called. Upstairs. The administration room smelled of copier toner and burnt coffee. Daniel Cross sat beside Nolan with a black case open on the table. At 49, Cross wore rimless glasses and aligned every pen before speaking. You are suspended pending review, he said. For what? Removal of historical property. Improper access to municipal archives. Coercion of staff. I asked questions. Nolan folded his hands. You created disruption. Cross slid a form across the table. Sign acknowledgement. Elias read the final line. Voluntary surrender of all departmental access. No. It confirms receipt, not guilt. Then remove the confession language. Cross's mouth tightened. That language is standard. Elias pushed the page back. Nolan exhaled through his nose. You were offered a quiet path. So was the truth. Cross closed the folder. Your locker and personal effects are now evidence. Elias looked toward the door. My mother's photograph is in there. Everything has been cataloged. I want the receipt. You'll receive one. When? After review. The wall clock clicked loud enough to divide the room into seconds. 2 security officers waited in the corridor. Neither met his eyes. They escorted him downstairs. The station had never felt so narrow. Boots stopped moving as he passed. Someone shut a cabinet. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen, and no one came out. Tessa stood near the hose rack. Nolan's voice followed from above. No conversations. She kept her chin level, but her fingers closed around a shop rag until water ran from it onto the floor. At locker 37, Elias reached for the handle. Cross stepped in front of him. Sealed. My coat is inside. Personal property will be returned. The photograph. Cross looked at the red evidence strip across the door. Already removed. Elias touched his shirt pocket. The fabric held a pale rectangle where the photograph had rested for years. A bent safety pin pressed against his fingertip. Who removed it? Cross did not answer. One of the officers held out a cardboard box. Elias placed his wallet, keys, and station pass inside. He kept Jonah Vale's brass key hidden beneath his watchband. Badge, Nolan said. Elias unclipped it and set it on top of the box. A rookie near the engine turned away. No one spoke. Outside, November cold slid under Elias's collar. The bay door began closing behind him with a grinding chain. Tessa moved and caught his gaze. Her lips formed 2 words. Basement. Tonight. The door hit the floor. Elias stood alone beside the lot, trying to button his civilian coat. His fingers missed twice. His phone vibrated. Unknown number. A woman whispered. They opened locker 37. Then the call ended. Across the street, a city maintenance van pulled away from the curb, and through its rear window, Elias saw a small black case marked Evidence. At 11:26 a.m., Claire's assistant called. Deputy Mayor Mercer expects you at noon. Elias watched the maintenance van vanish. I'm coming. City Hall held the dry heat of an old furnace. Marcus Finch met him by the elevator. Phone. No. Then the meeting ends. Elias glanced at the ceiling camera. That would be useful to record. Marcus opened the door. Claire stood at the window. On her desk lay a statement, a pen, and the smoke-stained envelope. You took my mother's photograph, Elias said. Your locker belongs to the department. The photograph doesn't. Sign, and you'll get it back. It said the box held nothing tied to the 1994 fire, that grief had affected his judgment, and that his suspension was voluntary. You wrote my apology. I wrote your way out. Out of what? A fitness ruling, lost pension, public disgrace. Marcus pushed the pen closer. Generous. Elias hung his wet coat over a chair, but remained standing. Water darkened the carpet. Where is the original letter? Claire touched the envelope. You misunderstood what you saw. Then read it. The furnace clicked off. Traffic murmured below. Claire drew out a yellowed sheet. Marcus nodded. Lena, if they tell Elias that Jonah abandoned them, do not believe it. Her voice tightened. Continue, Elias said. He went back after the evacuation order because the dormitory doors were chained. He knew Arthur Mercer's permit allowed the locks. He knew they would blame him. Elias gripped the empty pocket of his shirt. Claire stopped. There's more. This proves nothing. It proves the letter exists. Marcus stepped closer. Captain Ward. Former captain, Claire said. Elias kept his eyes on the page. Read the last paragraph. Claire folded it once. He waited. Her thumbnail pressed a crescent into the paper. Your son was the boy Jonah carried to the east window, she read. He gave Elias to you, then turned back for the children still inside. The room narrowed to Marcus's shoe scraping the rug. Elias's fingers would not release the cloth over his chest. Claire looked away first. You were 11. Smoke exposure. Memory loss. Your mother changed your surname. Because she feared your family. My father saved that shelter. No, he saved his name. She stood. Her chair struck the wall. You know nothing about him. I know he signed the permit. Marcus moved between them. Enough. Claire's face had paled, but her voice stayed measured. Sign. Return to duty in 6 months. Your badge, pension, and photograph restored. And Jonah? Remains where history placed him. Elias picked up the pen. Marcus relaxed. Elias drew a line through the signature block and wrote beneath it, Preserve the original. He set the pen down. Claire pressed the intercom. Security. 2 officers entered. One stared at the floor. As they guided Elias out, Claire said, No one will believe a damaged man over 32 years of records. Elias turned at the elevator. You just read the truth aloud in front of 3 witnesses. Marcus's hand froze on the envelope. The doors closed. Elias saw Claire pull the letter toward the shredder. Above her office door, the red security light was still blinking. At 6:45 the next morning, Tessa parked behind a boarded appliance store on Bellwether's south side. You're sure? Elias asked. She checked Henry's note. Apartment above the old dispatch annex. Ruth Bell. The stairwell smelled of boiled cabbage, dust, and radiator metal. A television laughed behind a wall. Ruth opened on the second knock. She was 76, thin as a folded coat, with silver hair pinned at the nape, and a hearing aid she adjusted whenever the pipes knocked. "I told Henry I was done remembering." "He said you kept something," Tessa replied. Ruth looked at Elias and the empty place in his shirt pocket. "You have Lena's eyes." Inside, an obsolete dispatch console occupied half the living room. Its yellowed switches wore curling tape labels. A red lamp warmed a circle of dust. Ruth locked the door. "November 3rd, 1994. I was on Channel 2. She removed a cassette from a drawer. Her thumb moved over the handwritten label until the ink blurred. "Why keep it?" Elias asked. "Because they told me to erase it." Tessa set her phone beside the recorder. "Who?" "Deputy Chief Halpern, Arthur Mercer's attorney. And a young lieutenant who said he was only following procedure." "Nolan." Ruth did not answer. The cassette clicked into place. Tape hiss filled the room. A younger Ruth read unit numbers. Sirens bled through static. Then a man spoke, breathless but controlled. "Dispatch, Vale. East dormitory blocked. Chains on both exits." Elias gripped the chair. "Permit tag says Mercer Development. Repeat, Mercer Development. Children moving to the third-floor window." Ruth stopped the tape. "You knew," Tessa said. "I logged it. Where is the log?" "Rewritten before sunrise." "Play the rest," Elias said. Ruth's fingers shook so badly she missed the button. He waited. She pressed play. Static. A bell. Jonah Vale again. "I have the boy. East window. Woman in dark coat below." Lena's voice broke through, distant and raw. "Jonah." Then Jonah said, "Take Elias. Don't let them change his name." Elias's knees touched the chair. A small blue bead lay beside the recorder. Ruth saw him notice. "Your mother dropped it here 2 weeks later. She came for the tape." "Why didn't you give it to her?" Ruth stared at the cassette turning behind its window. "My husband needed surgery. City insurance covered it. They put the cancellation form on my desk." The radiator struck once. "So you chose him," Tessa said. "I chose one person and failed 12 others." Elias stopped the tape before the final stretch. "No," Ruth said. "You need the end." She pressed play. Jonah returned, quieter. "Window transfer complete. Going back for 6. A dispatcher asked him to confirm. He gave coordinates. Then came a long burst of static. Ruth removed the cassette and placed it in Elias's palm. Outside, brakes squealed. A black sedan stopped at the curb. Tessa moved to the curtain. "Marcus." Ruth crossed to the console and opened a second compartment. "I made 3 copies," she said. "One for fear, one for guilt." She handed Tessa another tape. "And the third?" Elias asked. Ruth looked toward the basement door. "Already sent to someone who still has the courage to use it." The black sedan remained at the curb while Tessa slipped the second cassette inside her coat. "Backstairs?" Ruth pointed toward the kitchen. "Through the laundry room." Elias stayed by the recorder. "Who has the third copy?" "Dr. Alan Shaw. He knows the hospital files." Marcus knocked 3 times. "Ms. Bell, City Council. We need to discuss stolen municipal property." Ruth's mouth thinned. He says discuss when he means surrender. Tessa opened the rear door. Elias handed Ruth the first tape. "Keep this. You need it. I need you to testify that it's real." Her fingers closed around the cassette. They descended as Marcus's knock became a fist against wood. At 9:18 a.m., May Larson met them in the basement records room of St. Vincent Hospital. She was 38, dark-haired, with a pen tucked through her braid. "Shaw retired 11 years ago," she said. but he left a sealed file. A clerk placed a mildew-scented ledger on the table. May found November 3rd, 1994. Unknown male, approximately 11. Smoke exposure, temporary memory loss. No burns recorded. Brought in by Lena Ward. Under personal effects, someone had written, "Blue glass bead on cord." Tessa touched the bead in her pocket. "That's him." "That's a child," Elias said. "Not proof of a name." May slid over a school photograph from 1995. Lena stood behind a smaller Elias. His left eyebrow carried the same break it did now. Birthdate matches. Prior records unavailable. A cane tapped in the corridor. Dr. Alan Shaw entered in a brown overcoat, too large at the shoulders. At 67, he moved carefully. "You look like Jonah," he told Elias. Shaw set down an envelope. "Lena asked me to keep this until you came looking without her." "Why didn't she tell me?" "Each time you heard the name Vale, you stopped breathing." Elias looked at the ledger. "Was I his son?" Shaw unfolded a carbon copy. "Lena said Jonah was your father. She changed your surname after men from Mercer Development came to the ward asking whether you remembered the chains." The lights buzzed overhead. May asked, "Did you document that visit?" Shaw produced a note signed at 4:12 a.m. "Child becomes distressed at name Arthur Mercer. Guardian requests restricted access." Elias read it twice. Tessa opened her palm. The blue bead caught the fluorescent light and left a small blue mark across his skin. A memory came without warning. Cold stone under bare feet, a man at a window, Lena shouting below. Then a voice against his ear. "Don't look back." Elias sat down. May lowered her pen. "We can stop." "No. Publish the identity chain, not the medical details." Shaw opened the envelope. Inside was a photograph of Lena beside Jonah Vale, holding a birthday cake. On the back, in Lena's handwriting, were 6 words. Elias, age 10. "With your father." Tessa turned toward the shelves. "The city will attack every source," May said. "They already have," Elias said. His phone rang. Judge Evelyn Brooks. "Captain Ward, do not return home. The city has petitioned to seize every dispatch tape." "On what grounds?" "Forgery." May's laptop chimed. Her article had uploaded. Then every light in the basement went out. In the dark, the blue bead remained warm in Elias's closed hand. Emergency lights painted the hospital basement red. "Stay close," Elias said. A door slammed beyond the shelves. Tessa raised her phone light while May unplugged her laptop. "Power failure?" Shaw listened. "Only this floor." At the stairwell, a guard blocked them. "City order. No records leave." May raised her press card. "The article already did." Forgotten firefighter named in 1994, St. Agnes cover-up. Judge Evelyn Brooks called Elias. "Come to the commission room. Bring every witness." By 10:03 a.m., the disciplinary room was full. Nolan sat beside Claire and Marcus. Daniel Cross aligned 3 folders. Reporters crowded behind the glass. Brooks entered with the sealed envelope, navy suit sharp beneath the lights. "This is now an independent evidentiary session. No document leaves." Claire rose. "You have no jurisdiction." Brooks placed a signed order on the table. "Read slowly." Elias sat opposite them. Ruth entered with Henry and the cassette recorder. Nolan's face tightened. "That tape is stolen property." Ruth set it down. "It was copied before your office learned how to erase things." Claire turned to Brooks. "This is theater." "No. Theater has rehearsals." The cassette hissed. Jonah's voice filled the room. "East dormitory blocked. Chains on both exits." Phones began glowing behind the glass. "Unverified audio," Nolan said. Dr. Shaw stepped forward. The hospital log verifies the boy. May slid copies across the table. The archive verifies the permit. Marcus reached for them. Brooks covered the pages. Sit down. Tessa played the plaza recording. Nolan's voice emerged through fabric noise. Destroy the letter before Ward understands who the boy from the window was. The vent rattled every 12 seconds. Cross looked at Nolan. You told me the box held receipts. It did. Elias unfolded the audit printout. Entry created at 1418. Deleted at 1743 under your credentials. Credentials can be misused. Then name who used them. Nolan was silent. May's laptop rang. 3 regional outlets copied the story. Outside, every phone rose. Brooks opened the envelope. Inside were Lana's duplicate letter and a contractor's notarized statement. Claire stared at the signature. Brooks read, At Arthur Mercer's request, I concealed the box and was paid through the Mercer Foundation. Nolan turned toward Claire. You said there was no contractor. Not here, she whispered. Cross slid one folder toward Brooks. I need to amend my statement. He opened an access log. The photograph from Captain Ward's locker was removed under Chief Price's authorization and delivered to Deputy Mayor Mercer's office. Claire's chair scraped backward. Daniel, Marcus warned. Cross removed his glasses. This was evidence suppression? Brooks asked, Where is the photograph? No one answered. The fire alarm began to ring. Security moved toward the exits. Claire reached for Lena's duplicate letter. Elias touched its edge. Leave it. She withdrew her hand. Nolan's phone lit with a message visible across the table. Archive room cleared. Originals gone. Brooks read it before the screen darkened. Lock the building. But somewhere below them, an elevator was already descending. The elevator stopped at basement level before security reached it. Who has archive access? Brooks asked. Sylvia Grant stood near the rear wall, cardigan buttoned wrong. She removed her glasses. I do. Claire turned. Sylvia, don't. Red alarm light washed over the former shelter children. Tell us what was removed, Brooks said. In March, Deputy Mayor Mercer ordered me to replace 4 pages in the St. Agnes file. That is false. Sylvia placed a routing slip on the table. Your authorization. The paper shook beneath her fingers. You said the originals were contaminated. Then you asked whether Captain Ward had requested them. You agreed they were unsafe. I agreed because you mentioned my pension. Nina Holt lowered her head. Samuel Kane gripped a folded umbrella until its ribs creaked. Where are the originals? In a drawer beneath the map cabinet. Marcus checked his phone. The basement was cleared. The decoy drawer was cleared. Security returned with a flat archival box. Brooks lifted the lid. Inside lay the permit, Jonah Vale's addendum, and a photograph of chained exit doors. Henry Dawson rose. His cane slipped beneath a chair. I took that photograph. Nolan stared at him. You signed the final report. I signed a blank continuation sheet. You expect anyone to believe that? Henry looked toward the survivors. I expect them to hear it. The alarm stopped. Cameras hummed behind the glass. Vale went back after the withdrawal order, Henry said. 6 children were inside. Mercer arrived after the east window transfer. Samuel stood halfway. I was one of the 6. No one moved. I remember a firefighter counting us by touching our shoulders, Samuel said. He told us, not the stairs. Follow my voice. Claire pressed both palms to the table. My father said he entered that building. He may have believed his own version, Henry replied. Marcus opened a ledger. The foundation paid for archive remediation. That is not destruction. One transaction was circled. Private disposal, $18,400. Brooks looked at Claire. Authorized last month. I was a child when he came home. His coat smelled like smoke. Everyone called him a hero. Elias said, and 32 years later? Her mouth tightened. You knew the letter existed. You paid to clear the archive after I found it. Security blocked the doors. Nina approached Sylvia. Why didn't you call us? Sylvia tried to answer. No sound came. Nina placed the bent paper firefighter helmet on the evidence table. We spent our lives thanking the wrong family. Sylvia covered her mouth. Brooks closed the ledger. The commission will refer obstruction, document tampering, and witness intimidation for criminal review. Nolan whispered, Claire, say something. She turned to him. You deleted the digital entry. You told me to contain it. And you failed. Cross slid Nolan's retirement packet away. Elias watched them separate. Brooks lifted Jonah Vale's addendum. Tomorrow, this commission will determine who entered St. Agnes, who saved those children, and who rewrote the record. At the bottom, beneath Jonah's signature, one sentence had been underlined. The boy at the east window answered to Elias Vale. At 9 a.m., every seat in the commission chamber was filled. Jonah Vale's addendum lay beneath a clear cover. Elias stood at the rear until Judge Brooks pointed to the chair beside Ruth. Captain Ward. Suspended, Captain, Nolan said. Brooks ignored him. Sit down, Mr. Ward. Nina Holt held the bent paper helmet on her lap. Brooks began. The dispatch tape, hospital ledger, permit, archive copies, and access log are authenticated. Nolan leaned toward his microphone. Authentication does not prove causation. Ruth turned the cassette in both hands. You were on duty that night. I was a lieutenant outside command. You entered dispatch at 4:40 a.m. That was 32 years ago. I remember because you unplugged my recorder. Brooks pressed a button. Jonah's voice filled the speakers. East dormitory blocked. Chains on both exits. Then another voice, younger but unmistakable. Unit 7, withdraw. Do not mention permit status on open channel. Nolan stared at the table. Is that you? Brooks asked. His collar moved when he swallowed. Yes. Henry stepped forward. Jonah ignored that order because 6 children were still inside. Marcus rose. Speculation. Samuel spoke from the gallery. Memory. The hallway was dark. We heard metal on the doors. Then a man called our names through the smoke. Did you see him? Brooks asked. Not clearly, but he counted us, one hand on each shoulder. Samuel placed 6 school photographs beside Jonah's report. He got 5 of us to the window. Then he went back for Nina. I was under a cot, she said. He gave me his glove so I would hold on to something. She set an old leather glove beside the photographs. Inside the cuff, faded ink read J. Vale. Brooks read the finding. Jonah Vale had identified illegal locks, moved 12 children from the East Dormitory, transferred his son Elias through the window to Lena Ward, and died after returning for those still trapped. Arthur Mercer arrived after the evacuation and later altered the record. Claire stood. My father came home covered in soot. Henry met her eyes. From posing beside the engine. Her face broke for 1 second. You all accepted the honors. Yes, Henry said. That is why we are here. Brooks turned to Elias. The city is prepared to restore your badge immediately. Cross opened a velvet case. Elias took the badge but did not pin it on. He closed it inside his palm. Read his name. Brooks looked at the report. Jonah Vale. Samuel repeated it. Then Nina. Then Ruth. The name moved through the room, not as applause, but as a correction. Nolan pushed back his chair. I was following orders. Elias looked at him. You followed them again last week. Brooks removed Nolan and referred all three for criminal review. Cameras flashed behind the glass. May Larson reached Elias outside. Do you feel vindicated? He glanced at Nina's glove, Ruth's tape, and the blue bead in Tessa's palm. No, he said. I feel late. Cross offered a document authorizing his return. Elias folded it once and handed it back. I'll wear the badge after the memorial carries the right name. Brooks opened a folder marked Policy Reform, and Elias moved toward the table before anyone called him. At 4:18 p.m., Elias placed the old building plan on the council lectern. Its folds had softened, but the red circles around the chained exits remained sharp. Nolan's front row chair was empty. Council Chair Luis Garcia adjusted the microphone. Mr. Ward, the city has offered compensation, reinstatement, and an apology. Those repair one file. What are you asking for? An evidence system no chief can erase. Backup of dispatch audio. Independent review when records change. Protection for employees who report interference. Notice to families when closed cases reopen. A councilwoman glanced toward the gallery. That is more than one incident. So was the silence. Claire Mercer's nameplate had been removed from the dais. Marcus Finch said, "These measures exceed the Commission's mandate." Judge Brooks answered, "Then the Council should exceed its habits." Garcia tapped the proposal. The archive would cost nearly $400,000. Tessa stood near the rear wall. Less than one lawsuit. Elias opened the plan. The city paid $18,400 to destroy records. It can afford to preserve them. And the whistleblower provision? Garcia asked. Ruth Bell's hearing aid whistled. No employee should choose between telling the truth and keeping medicine in the house, Elias said. Ruth tightened both hands around her cane. Councilman Peter Shue removed his glasses. Would the rule apply retroactively? To any case with credible evidence of alteration. That could reopen dozens. Yes. And damage the city. The damage already happened. This decides whether we keep billing it to the victims. Garcia called for public comment. Henry Dawson placed Jonah's locker key beside the microphone. I kept this because I was afraid to use it, he said. Write a rule for the next person before fear becomes 32 years. Then Sylvia rose. I altered the archive. No one turned away. I told myself I was protecting my pension. I was protecting the people who threatened it. She slid her resignation letter onto the clerk's desk. At 5:07, Garcia called the vote. Green lights appeared across the panel. Shue hesitated last. Nina Holt unfolded the bent paper helmet and set it on the empty seat beside her. He pressed, yes. The board showed 9-0. The veil rule is adopted, Garcia said. Tessa placed the brass key in Ruth's palm. Ruth closed Henry's fingers over it instead. Keep it, she said, but not hidden. Only then did the room rise. Outside, crews removed Nolan Price's portrait from the station honors wall. He had resigned that morning. Claire Mercer's office remained sealed. Cross met Elias on the courthouse steps and offered him the badge. Effective immediately. Elias pinned it inside his coat. When will you wear it outside? Tessa asked. When Jonah's name is on the stone. Garcia emerged with the signed ordinance and handed Elias the first certified copy. At the bottom, one line had been added. No act of service may be erased by the convenience of authority. Elias folded the ordinance around the plan and looked toward St. Agnes, where workers had begun removing Arthur Mercer's name. 8 months later, at 6:32 p.m., The last strip of canvas came away from the St. Agnes Memorial. The new stone held no single name above the others. Jonah Vale appeared beside the dispatchers, teachers, firefighters, and 12 children carried out that night. Beneath them, a smaller line read, Elias Vale, age 11, east window. Elias stood with his coat open. His restored badge was finally pinned outside. Tessa adjusted the microphone. She now coordinated Bellwether's independent evidence system. 3 sealed boxes waited for the state archive. First backup completed at noon, she said. Off-site? 2 copies. Neither belongs to a chief. Ruth Bell arrived, holding Henry's arm. Her testimony now opened academy training. Henry had refused a plaque. Recruits would hear him admit watching Lena leave the station alone. Nina met Ruth beside the stone. Ruth began, I should have. Nina placed Jonah's old glove in her hands. You came back with the tape. Ruth held it against her coat. Across the lawn, Sylvia Grant showed Samuel the public archive terminal. Each altered St. Agnes page appeared beside its original, dated and attributed. May Larson closed her notebook. The state report is out. What happened? Tessa asked. Nolan cannot hold public command again. Claire pleaded to records obstruction, left office, and received supervised service in archives outside Bellwether. Marcus was sanctioned for withholding evidence. Elias looked toward the empty place where Arthur Mercer's portrait had once stood. No speeches from them? None worth printing. Council Chair Garcia read the Vale rule into the record. Dispatch audio would be copied automatically. Evidence deletions would trigger outside review. Employees reporting interference could request protected transfer without losing health coverage. Families in reopened cases would be notified within 10 days. The crowd waited before applauding. Judge Brooks called Elias forward. He carried Lena's photograph and the blue glass bead. One corner was bent, but it was intact. You may place the first item in the memorial case, Brooks said. Elias set down the photograph. Not the badge. A boy from the school choir watched from the front row. His paper firefighter helmet was repaired with clear tape. Was he really your dad? The boy asked. Yes. Did you remember him? Not enough. The boy removed the helmet and placed it beside Lena's photograph. As evening cooled the stone, Samuel traced Jonah's name without touching it. Sylvia corrected a date on the display. Henry counted the listed children under his breath. Ruth approached Elias last. Your mother asked me to keep you safe, she said. I thought silence could do that. Elias turned the bead between his fingers. Silence kept the wrong thing safe. At Station 3 later that night, Tessa opened locker 37. It had been moved upstairs and fitted with a glass door. Jonah's brass key hung inside beside the corrected report. Elias pinned the blue bead beneath the shelf. Ready for tomorrow, Captain? Tessa asked. He touched the photograph in his pocket, then looked at Jonah's name through the glass. Ready enough. Outside, the engines rested beneath white bay lights. The bead caught one narrow beam and cast 2 blue marks across the locker wall. One for the father, one for the son. Have you ever seen someone's dignity threatened because an institution valued its reputation more than the truth? Share what happened in the comments, especially if one quiet witness or preserved document finally changed the outcome. Send this story to someone who believes justice is not only about exposing wrongdoing, but also about repairing the systems that allowed it to continue. Subscribe for more stories about justice, quiet resilience, forgotten voices, and the lasting changes ordinary people can create when they refuse to surrender the truth. And remember, people who speak late are not always without courage. Sometimes they have carried fear for years and are finally choosing which truth deserves to survive.